Hello and welcome to GeoBiz. I'm your host Bhanu Rekha and moderator of today's discussion on Industry Upbeat. The United States National Geospatial Advisory Committee released its latest report, The Changing Geospatial Landscape, a Second Look. So this report is a second in series of reports which bring out technology trends that will really have an impact on the implementation and planning of several federal government programs and how and the policies as well, and also the transition plans after the presidential elections later this year. So to give us more details about this report, its recommendations, and how FGDC, the Federal Geographic Data Committee, is creating an action plan towards implementing these recommendations, we have in our studios Executive Director from Federal Geographic Data Committee, DeLoatch. Thank you so much, Ivan, for joining us on this discussion. It's a pleasure having this discussion with you today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And first of all, I'd like to thank Geospatial Media for the opportunity to have this conversation. And second of all, I'd like to thank the members of the National Geospatial Advisory Committee for their outstanding report, which is the subject of the discussion today. And as you stated, I am serving as the Executive Director of the Federal Geographic Data Committee, which has the responsibility for establishing and developing the national spatial data infrastructure in the U.S. And the National Geospatial Advisory Committee has been a very, very useful mechanism for us over the past 8 years in terms of providing us recommendations on how to, first of all, improve the way we are coordinating, collaborating in the federal space, but also identifying priorities that are important to the nation. And the members of the committee vary. They are representatives from the private sector. We have members from federal and state governments, as well as from nonprofits. In addition, we have members from academia. So it's really a broad base of individuals that bring a collective set of thinking to the table that really has been very productive for us. In the report that we're speaking to today, the Changing Landscape paper is one that builds on the first report that they provided for us about 7 years ago. And the reason that we requested this report from the NGAC, as we affectionately call them, was because at that time we're moving into a transition with their administration. So the Obama administration was just coming on board, and we wanted to have a paper or some documentation from the community that would sort of capture what they believe were some of the more important aspects of geospatial information technology that the administration could utilize. And in that paper that was led by Dr. Dave Cowan at the University of South Carolina, there was a lot of forward thinking that went into the paper that really helped us in making the case with the new administration that they should in fact include geospatial information and technology as part of their agenda in serving the American people. And that really worked wonderfully for us. So since that time, as we all know, the advancements in geospatial information it's been, stupendous. I mean, it's amazing how this technology is now enabling a lot of the work that we do in government, but also the expansion that we're now seeing in the private sector, but also in the public sector in terms of its uptake and utility by citizens. And because of that, there is a demand. Mm-hmm. And for us, we need to be able to identify and understand what our role is in that particular space. And it has changed and evolved. I mean, the National Spatial Data Infrastructure was a concept that evolved 20 years ago. And it has progressed throughout that period of time, but the technology is now at the point where it's becoming ubiquitous amongst us.
Sure.
To a point where we were the leaders at that time in terms of collecting and providing data. We're now starting to see that pendulum swing towards more to the private sector, who are, and for very good reasons. There have been a number of business opportunities and the serious demand for this information that has sort of fed that particular sector.
Yeah.
And we want to take advantage of that. So, and as we all know, government doesn't move as quickly as we would like. So we're trying to identify what we believe are the most significant roles for us. And we believe that will be as a leadership role and fostering opportunities for the private sector to innovate. And by doing that, one of the key actions from the Obama administration was the Open Data Initiative, which required agencies to share and expose their data that had a certain level of quality, that by which the community, not only private sector companies, but also there's very bright and intuitive students or individuals out there who want to utilize this information to develop value-added products for whatever reason, for decision making, for whether it's entertainment, a number of various uses. So that really stimulated a lot of the federal agencies and sharing that data, but also it revealed some of the challenges that we have in terms of the quality of our data. And that is a great lesson learned. So we now have the opportunity to take steps to improve that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that was outlined, I think, in the second version of the Changing Landscape paper. What are the things that the federal government can do to help to foster this community? In doing so, we need to think ahead.
Yes.
In terms of, from a policy point of view, what sort of changes that we need to undertake to take advantage of the power of geospatial technology and how it not only can serve our federal agencies, but also how it can serve the American people.
Going back to the report and how it has really brought out the latest technology trends, whether it's the platforms, including the small satellites, UAVs, and the computing aspect of it with the cloud, and how flexible cloud has initiated and listed out several opportunities in accommodating the latest technologies into that. What, according to you, is one single technology trend that is really going to be disruptive for many of the federal government projects and definitely for the FGDC initiative?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it's one that we have been entertaining over the last couple of years, and it's kind of hard to select just one, because I think in concert they all have some impact, but the one that I think that's really going to be the game changer is going to be mobile technologies.
Okay.
That's because it provides a greater uptake of use and demand. It also, not only is it a receiver, but also it's a sensor for information. But with that comes some of the challenges, from our perspective in terms of how do we deal with utilizing the information and balancing privacy.
Yes.
And that's another area that we've asked the NGAC to help us in terms of developing a policy that makes sense. I think cloud computing is the other, in my mind, the second most, I think, critical technology that's allowing us to be able to expand and to manage large data sets, which we were not able to do before. It also allows us to scale up and scale down according to need and use. That provides us with some cost efficiencies where we don't have to have all these huge servers sitting someplace all the time being managed. We can now utilize cloud technology in a way that allows us to expand or upscale as necessary, depending on the appropriate use. So I think those two are, from a technology point of view, are really been the game changers. I think the other for us, while not from a technology point of view, but from a policy point of view, I think the push and drive for open data has changed the world radically in open government. The U.S. was a leader in this space several years ago, but we're starting to see this being adopted by countries all over the world now. And it really provides an opportunity to inform the citizenry, but also it also keeps us honest in terms of some of the decisions that are being made by our leaders. So, but also it provides an opportunity to enhance that information by ground truthing it, which I think is an area that we still haven't completely understood, but I think there's opportunity there to really embellish that and take advantage of that.
So how has been the response to the open data initiative from the private sector? Because much of the, as you have earlier said, much of the data acquisition mode has moved from government to the private sector. Has there been good participation in the open data initiative from the private sector and the non-government sector as well?
From my experience, yes. I think and one of the key opportunities there is to have access to this data.
True.
And to be able to then be able to utilize it in a way that they can provide value-added products. It also has provided an opportunity to collaborate, where we see where there are gaps in some of the things that we need to do, and also there's a role of the private sector in providing that middleware.
Okay.
And I think a number of agencies have embarked on projects to do that. My agency, the U.S. Geological Survey, has seen substantial growth and excellent results in releasing the Landsat data set. We didn't imagine this was going to happen when we first started this, but it has been a great news story for us. The other is that the National Oceanographic Administration has also had issued a request for information and asking the private sector if they had access to our to their data, what would they do with that information, and would it be a useful exercise in have that available to them? And it's been a great response to that as well. Okay.
Considering that many of the technologies that are highlighted by the NGAC report are still being tested, for example, the UAVs, so and not completely reliable at this point to securely use them for various projects, has there been any action plan in terms of inducting these or supporting these technologies in a short-term, medium-term, and a long-term phases, kind of a thing?
From the FGDC point of view, we've have provided guidance questions to the NGAC in response to some of these short-term and long-term developments. And what we're planning to do throughout the rest of this calendar year is to analyze some of these new technologies. And of course, in government we're somewhat more conservative, but we also do a lot of research in these areas, so it's sort of a balance. But we're anticipating incorporating some of the results of this analysis into our upcoming new FY17 strategic framework that we would like to have prepared for the next administration to consider in adopting that and addressing some of its agenda items. And we anticipate this framework being somewhat base neutral, not party affiliated, but it's really recommendations that would make sense for no matter what leadership is in play. And the NGAC in its report has provided a good baseline for that. So we see some opportunities to develop a series of goals and objectives around some of these recommendations that I think will move us forward in the midterm. Short term, we're starting to see some of the uptake of drone technology, especially in terms of its cost efficiencies, and utilizing those drones with various sensors to collect certain information on a limited scale. Again, we're wrestling with some of the privacy issues around that because it's a new frontier. It's something that is new for us from a government point of view in terms of implementation. But we also think we have to be mindful of what sort of policies need to be developed to help us.
So what kind of a role FGDC is playing in evolving such as enabling policies?
Well, I think one of the things we would like to propose is a revision to our current policy, which is OMB Circular A16. That policy was enacted back in 2002. So we all know in 2016 that the world is quite different.
Yeah,
and so
completely.
While some of the policies are still relevant, there are things that we need to do differently. And we need to be a lot more nimble in terms of how we incorporate and allow the use of this information technology in a productive way. So that is one area. Things outside of our domain could be new legislation, which we cannot, we as federal agencies do not promote, but we could inform. So if there's any opportunities down the road where there's legislation being proposed, we would love to have the opportunity to help inform that process, if possible. I think it also gives us opportunity to broaden the scope of work that we have been doing, and not focus specifically on data, but also on analytics and the technology that supports the analytics. We've spent a lot of time over the years developing tools for search and discovery, and now we're embarking on the access domain. But I think the most valuable aspect of all this is making that information useful. So we need to get to that point where the novice who wants to use that information can do that quite easy and find relevancy in the information, because with the advancement of technology, it has shortened the patience of individuals. If they can't find what they need or what they want in an immediate search and discovery exercise, they move on.
True.
So we have the goal of trying to make sure that folks are finding what they need and that it has usability for them. And we're just kind of starting and beginning with some of that thinking and trying to incorporate some of that into our National Geospatial Platform, which is currently serving as the technology instance for the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. We have some ways to go. I think we've improved on that capability, but there's still a number of things that we need to do to really realize that vision of from search discoverability to accessibility and to usability.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think the value of data is in its usability and how best it is used for the larger goals of the governance aspect of it. And in that front, analytics, as you said, will play a key role in creating more a solution-centric approach rather than just a data-centric approach. I'm sure I agree with that. So in terms of, there are several challenges, as you have mentioned in your earlier statement, like the quality of the data and also the privacy aspects of it, because there's now a glut of data, too much of data, so that it really exposes the privacy aspects of citizens. Well, I see that Europe is evolving the privacy laws in a much stricter way. The scenario is a bit fluid in the United States. How are you going to tackle with this too much of data and information?
Yeah, that's the balance that we want to strike. The Europeans, I think, are being a little more restrictive. Our colleagues in Australia are being a little bit more open.
Oh.
So I think looking at those two models, we want to do what's best for our country, and you're going to have different schools of thought around this. The digital natives think quite differently than the digital immigrants.
Absolutely.
And our younger generations, in my viewpoint, don't value the privacy aspects of sharing information as much as we have in the past. So trying to strike that balance and getting consensus on that, I think, is one of the significant challenges for us. But and all that's going to really be driven by how that information is used. If it's used in a positive way, of course, more than likely we'll get support for that. But if there are any negative connotations around the use of the information, then that's going to make folks a little bit more suspect. So, and it's human nature. There's some of us, that kind of understand that with the evolution of information technology, that privacy has been minimized. I mean, the information is there, it's out there, and it's really hard to put that toothpaste back in the tube, as we like to say. So, I think from a government's point of view, we're going to have to listen to our constituency and also address those issues.
Has there been any dialogue on that front?
We, last December, there was a privacy summit that was sponsored by the Office of Management and Budget, and it sort of was a result of the data breach that occurred last fall, last summer. So the leadership recognized that this was an issue and they wanted to take immediate action. So they organized a privacy summit that's not only about geospatial information, but about all information. And we had an opportunity to have a geospatial workshop there, or a workshop focused on geospatial information technology and privacy around that. And we had a member from the NGAC, and also Jerry Johnston from DOI participated in that effort. And we were able to have some good conversation around the issue of privacy. And even in the room, there were different schools of thought.
Okay.
Some of them were open and recognized that this is going to be something that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and others were like, well, I really don't want my information out there. I don't want people to know where I am. But we also asked the question, well, in utilizing your cell phone, that's happening, and did you even know that? And some cases folks didn't. In some cases they did. So
yeah.
So it's going to be something that it's going to be on the horizon.
Yes.
It's going to be one of those things will be a priority for us, and especially from from a citizenry point of view.
Absolutely. We are in a democracy, and definitely data democracy is something we will continue to debate and discuss over a period of time. Thank you so much, Ivan, for joining us on this discussion on the NGAC report, and I wish you all the best for taking these recommendations forward.
Thank you, and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.